When Nkem's hands began to wither that morning, turning gray as ancient bark and trembling like leaves in a storm, she knew the curse had found her. She stared at them in horror, these hands that had pushed an old woman into the mud just 3 days before, these hands that had pointed and mocked while the entire market watched, these hands that now looked like they belonged to someone who had lived 100 years. The mirror showed her what she feared most. Her face, once smooth as river stones, now carried lines deep as dried riverbeds. And in the reflection, she could still see the old woman's eyes, those terrible, knowing eyes. Nkem was born in the prosperous village of Umunza, where her father was the wealthiest palm wine trader for 7 settlements around. Her skin glowed like honey in sunlight. Her eyes were large and bright as morning stars. Her voice, when she laughed, sounded like bells dancing in the wind. But Nkem had a gift that made her truly special. She could see people's true hearts. When someone lied, she would see shadows moving behind their eyes. When someone harbored jealousy, she would see their words turn to smoke. When someone loved truly, she would see light surrounding them like fireflies at dusk. Her mother raised Nkem to believe she was superior to everyone. She dressed her daughter in wrappers of the brightest colors, adorned her neck with strings of coral beads, wrapped her head in gel that stood tall and proud. She taught Nkem that beauty and wealth meant power. The villagers watched Nkem grow into a woman whose pride stretched higher than the tallest palm tree. At the market, she would walk with her nose pointed to the sky, her wrapper swishing importantly, her bronze bracelets clinking. Women selling yams would greet her, but she would pass without acknowledgement. "That girl's pride will be her downfall," the elders whispered under the great tree. "Pride that tall has nowhere to go but down." Her mother created a monster, the women agreed at the river, a beautiful monster who thinks she is better than the earth itself. When Nkem reached the age of marriage, suitors came from every direction, but she rejected them all. She would examine each man with her gift, seeing their true hearts, and find them wanting. "I will marry only a man who matches my worth," she declared. "I will not settle for these village men." Years passed. The suitors stopped coming. The villagers whispered, "She will die alone. No man wants a wife whose pride is bigger than his compound." But Nkem did not care. She had her father's wealth, her mother's devotion, and her own reflection to admire. It was on a market day, when the sun hung high and hot like an angry eye watching the earth, that everything changed. Nkem walked through the crowded marketplace, her wrapper of deep purple cloth catching every gaze, her neck heavy with coral beads, her head wrapped in gold-colored jewel that shimmered. Women moved aside for her. Children stared. Men pretended not to notice, but noticed everything. And then she saw the old woman. The elder sat on a worn mat at the edge of the market, so ancient she seemed part of the earth itself. Her skin was wrinkled like dried fruit, her hair white as cotton, her body thin as a bamboo stalk. She wore a wrapper so faded its original color had been lost to time and many washings. Around her neck hung a single strand of dark beads that looked older than the village itself. At her feet was a small basket containing roots and herbs. "Medicine woman," someone whispered. "Healer from the deep forest." "I have never seen her before," another voice said. "Where did she come from?" The old woman's eyes followed Nkem across the market. Eyes that saw everything. Eyes that knew things no one should know. Nkem felt those eyes on her skin like insects crawling, and she did not like it. She did not like how the old woman looked at her without fear, without admiration, without bowing her head in respect. Nkem changed direction, her wrapper swirling, her bracelets announcing her approach. She stopped directly in front of the old woman, casting her shadow over the ancient face. "Why do you stare at me, old mother?" Nkem asked, her voice sharp as a new blade. The old woman smiled, revealing gaps where teeth had once been. "I see what you carry, child. I see the gift you were given and the poison you have made of it." The market grew quiet. People stopped their trading to watch. Women selling palm oil paused mid-pour, Men buying yams forgot to haggle. Everyone could feel something building in the air, something dangerous as a storm gathering over the river. Nkem's face twisted with rage. How dare this ancient, poor nobody speak to her with such familiarity? How dare she smile as if she knew secrets about Nkem's life? "You see nothing, old woman," Nkem spat. "You are blind with age and poverty. Look at you, sitting in the dirt like a beggar, wearing rags that even my father's servants would refuse. You speak of gifts? The only gift you have is the gift of being too stubborn to die." Gasps rippled through the market. Women covered their mouths. Men shook their heads slowly. Even the children knew that disrespecting elders, especially strange elders who might carry power beyond understanding, was inviting catastrophe into your life. But Nkem was not finished. Her anger, fed by years of unchecked pride, poured out like palm wine from a broken gourd. "You sit here pretending to be a healer, a wise woman, but you are nothing, nothing. If you had any power, any wisdom, you would not be here in rags. You would not be alone. You would not be so pathetically old and useless." The old woman's smile faded. Her eyes, which had been warm despite their ancient depth, grew cold as river stones in moonlight. She tried to stand, her body shaking with the effort, reaching for a walking stick made of twisted wood. And that is when Nkem did the unthinkable. She kicked the old woman's basket, scattering herbs and roots across the dirt. Then, as the elder struggled to rise, Nkem placed her hand on the woman's shoulder and pushed hard. The old woman fell backward into the mud left by yesterday's rain, her wrapper splashing brown, her walking stick flying from her hand, her body crumpling like dry leaves. The market froze. Complete silence fell like a heavy wrapper over everything. No one moved, no one breathed. The only sound was the old woman's labored breathing as she lay in the mud, struggling like an overturned tortoise. Nkem stood over her, chest heaving with righteous anger, her shadow covering the fallen elder like a stain. "That is where you belong, in the dirt. That is your place, not speaking to your betters, not looking at those above you." The old woman slowly, painfully, pushed herself up on her elbows. Mud covered her wrapper, her arms, her white hair. But her eyes, when they found Nkem's face, burned with something beyond anger, something ancient and terrible and absolutely certain. 3 days, the old woman whispered, her voice carrying across the silent market, though it was barely louder than wind through grass. 3 days, and you will understand. You will wear what you have given. You will carry what you have shown. You will become what you truly are inside, where no one can see, and everyone will see. She raised one muddy hand, fingers twisted with age, and pointed at Nkem. 3 days. Let the village watch. Let everyone see what happens when beauty houses ugliness, when gifts are poisoned by pride, when a heart grows so cold it pushes elders into mud. The old woman's hand trembled, and for just a moment the beads around her neck glowed with a light that had no source. The market gasped collectively. Some people stepped back. Mothers pulled children close. Nkem laughed loud and cruel, the sound bouncing off the market stalls. "Curses! You threaten me with curses, you pathetic old fool? I am Nkem, daughter of the wealthiest man in Umunzi. No dirty forest witch can touch me. Your words are as empty as your basket." She turned away, her wrapper swirling dramatically, her head high. Behind her, women finally moved to help the old woman up, their hands gentle, their faces frightened. But when they looked for her, the elder had vanished. Gone. Only her walking stick remained, standing upright in the mud where she had fallen, though no one had placed it there. "Where did she go?" voices whispered. "Did you see her leave?" "She was here, and then... the stick. Look at the stick standing alone." Word spread through Umunza, faster than wildfire through dry grass. By evening, every compound knew what Nkem had done. Every family discussed it over their evening meal. The elders gathered under the great tree, their faces grave as they passed around a gourd of palm wine. "She has done something terrible," the oldest man said, his wrapper wrapped tight against the evening chill. "To push an elder, a stranger who might be more than she seems. This is not a small thing." "Her pride has finally gone too far," another agreed. "The gods do not ignore such disrespect." At the river, where women gathered to wash clothes before darkness fell, the gossip flowed as freely as the water. "I saw it with my own eyes," one woman said, beating a wrapper against a stone. "The old woman just disappeared, like smoke." "3 days," she said. Another added, wringing water from a head wrap. "What do you think will happen in 3 days?" "Nothing good," a third woman replied, her voice low and certain. "Nothing good ever comes from cursing, and nothing worse than a curse from one who carries true power." But in her father's compound, Nkem dismissed it all. She ate her evening meal of pounded yam and rich soup, laughed at her mother's worries, admired herself in her bronze mirror. She was untouchable. She was protected by wealth and beauty and her father's position. What could an old woman's words do to her? "You should apologize," her mother suggested nervously, adjusting her own wrapper. "Perhaps we should make an offering at the shrine." "For what?" Nkem snapped. "For putting a disrespectful old beggar in her place? Mother, you worry too much. Tomorrow everyone will forget this happened." But the village did not forget. The first day after the market incident, Nkem woke feeling strange. Her hands tingled as if she had slept on them wrong. She dressed in her finest wrapper of red cloth, her heaviest coral beads, her most elaborate head wrap. She would show everyone that nothing had changed, but when she reached the market, people stared differently, not with admiration, but with pity mixed with fear. Women whispered, men turned away, children pointed until their mothers pulled them back. By the second day, the tingling had become pain. When she woke and looked at her hands in the morning light, she gasped. The skin looked different, slightly gray, slightly rough, like she had aged 10 years overnight. "Mother," she called. "Look at my hands!" Her mother went pale. "Perhaps you need rest." "This is not tiredness," Nkem shouted. "They look like an old woman's hands." 3 healers came, examined her, and left shaking their heads. One whispered to her father, "This is not sickness of the body. This is something else, something we cannot touch with herbs or prayers." The villagers knew by evening. "The curse is working," they said. "The old woman's words are coming true." That night, Nkem could not sleep. She lay on her sleeping mat, staring at the darkness of her ceiling, listening to her mother cry softly in the next room. Her hands ached. Her face felt tight, strange, as if invisible fingers were pulling at her skin. And in her mind, over and over, she saw the old woman's eyes, those terrible, knowing eyes. The 3rd day arrived with a dawn as red as blood. Nkem woke to her mother's scream. "Nkem! Nkem! Your face!" Nkem stumbled to her bronze mirror, and what she saw made her own scream join her mother's. Her face had aged 40 years overnight. Deep lines carved through her skin like dried riverbeds. Her smooth brow was furrowed and wrinkled. Her bright eyes were sunken, surrounded by dark circles. Her neck, once slim and graceful, showed cords and looseness. Her hands were worse still, gray and spotted and trembling like ancient branches in wind. She looked like the old woman from the market. She looked like she had pushed an elder into the mud and stolen that elder's years, wearing them on her own young body like a curse made visible. "No," Nkem whispered, touching her face with her withered hands. "No, no, no!" Her mother wept. Her father, when he saw her, turned away, his face a mask of grief and shame. Servants whispered in corners. By midday, everyone in Umunze knew. The curse had completed its work. Nkem the beautiful had become Nkem the ancient, and the transformation was absolute. People came to stare. They gathered outside her father's compound, not mocking, but silent with awe and fear. They saw what the gods could do. They saw what happened when pride pushed elders into mud. They saw justice made flesh. "The old woman said 3 days," someone whispered. "She said everyone would see." "Everyone is seeing," another replied. "Everyone is seeing." Inside the compound, Nkem collapsed to her knees, her aged body struggling with the motion. She wept, but her tears brought no relief. She was trapped in this withered form, this body that showed the ugliness she had always carried inside, the ugliness her beauty had hidden from the world. Days passed. Nkem would not leave her room. She would not eat. She sat in darkness, her mirror turned to the wall. Her mother brought food that went uneaten. Her father hired more healers who came and left with empty hands. On the 6th day, as night wrapped around the village, someone knocked on the compound gate. The servant fell back with a gasp. There, in the moonlight, stood the old woman. But she was not old anymore. Her skin glowed smooth and beautiful. Her hair fell in dark waves. Her body stood straight and strong. She wore a wrapper of deep indigo that seemed woven from the night sky itself, and the beads around her neck pulsed with their own light. "I have come for Nkem," she said, her voice no longer ancient and cracked, but rich as honey, strong as the river current. The servant ran to wake the household. Within moments, Nkem's mother and father stood before the mysterious woman, their faces pale with fear and hope, tangled together like fighting snakes. "Please," Nkem's mother begged, falling to her knees. "Please reverse this curse. My daughter has learned her lesson. Look at her, how she suffers. Please show mercy." The woman who had been old looked past them toward the dark doorway where Nkem's room waited. "Bring her to me." They carried Nkem out, for she could barely walk in her ancient body. The moonlight fell on her withered face, and for a moment, the two women looked at each other. The young woman who carried age like a burden. The old woman who had shed years like a snake shed skin. "Do you know who I am?" the beautiful woman asked. Nkem's voice was thin as wind through reeds. "No." "I am Ugo, guardian of the sacred forest. I am keeper of the gift you were born with. I am the one who gave your grandmother the sight that she passed to your mother, and your mother passed to you. The gift of seeing true hearts." She moved closer, and her beauty was terrible to behold, not because it was ugly, but because it was too pure, too real, too filled with power. "I came to your market to see what you had done with my gift, and I saw." Nkem trembled. Her aged hands shook like leaves before a storm. "I saw it," she whispered. "I saw your heart. I saw light so bright it hurt my eyes, and still I spoke with cruelty. Still I pushed you into the mud." "Yes." Ugo's voice was soft but carried the weight of judgment. "You saw goodness and attacked it. You saw light and tried to extinguish it. You saw someone defenseless and chose violence. What does that make you?" "A monster," Nkem said, tears flowing down her wrinkled cheeks. "A monster with a beautiful face. But you have shown everyone what I truly am. You have made the outside match the inside. And has it taught you anything?" Nkem looked down at her withered hands. Hands that had pushed an elder, hands that had pointed in mockery, hands that now shook with age that was not her own. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am sorry for the pain I caused, for the disrespect, for thinking that beauty and wealth made me better than anyone. I was wrong. I was so wrong." Ugo studied her for a long moment. The night was silent around them, as if the village itself held its breath. Even the insects stopped their chirping. Even the wind paused its movement through the palm trees. "Sorry is a small word for a large crime," Ugo finally said. "But I see your heart now, and where there was darkness, I see a crack where light begins to seep through." She reached into her wrapper and pulled out the same strand of dark beads she had worn in the market. But now they glowed, pulsing with each beat of her heart. These beads carry what you gave me. 3 days of humiliation, of lying in mud, of being mocked and pushed. 3 days of pain. They are yours now. Wear them, and you will slowly return to what you were. But you will never forget what you learned. Each bead carries a memory. Each bead carries a lesson. And if you ever forget, if you ever return to the pride that poisoned you, the curse will return faster than a lightning strike, and next time, there will be no reversal. You will be ancient until your true death catches up with your appearance. She placed the beads around Nkem's withered neck. They were heavy, so heavy, as if each one carried the weight of all her mistakes. 3 months, Ugo said. 1 month for each day of the curse. By the full moon of the 3rd month, you will be yourself again. Use that time well. Use that time to become someone worthy of the gift you carry. And then, like smoke on the wind, like mist over the river at dawn, Ugo was gone. Not walking away, not leaving, just gone, as if she had never been there at all. But the beads remained, heavy around Nkem's neck, pulsing with a gentle warmth that began, slowly, to ease the pain in her hands. The transformation back was slow, as promised. Each day, Nkem felt a little less ancient. Each week, the lines on her face grew shallower, but the change in her heart was faster. Nkem began to help. She went to the market to carry baskets for elderly women. She used her gift of seeing true hearts not to judge, but to understand and serve. When she saw darkness in someone, she showed compassion. When she saw light, she nurtured it. The villagers watched with wonder. "Look at Nkem," the women said at the river. "She has changed. Not just her appearance, her spirit, her heart." 3 months passed. On the night of the 3rd full moon, Nkem stood before her bronze mirror. She looked like herself again. But when she looked in her eyes, she saw someone different. Someone who had been broken and remade. Someone who had worn ugliness on the outside and learned to remove it from the inside. The beads around her neck no longer glowed, but she did not remove them. They were her reminder, her teacher. "Nkem?" Her mother's voice came from the doorway. "There is someone here to see you." There stood Chidi, son of a farmer she had rejected years before. "Nkem," he said softly, "I heard what happened. I am glad you are well." Nkem looked at him with her gift, seeing his true heart. She saw goodness there, patience, genuine care. How had she missed this before? "Chidi," she said, her voice different now, gentler. "Would you like to sit? I would be honored if you would stay for palm wine and conversation." He smiled. "I would like that very much." As they sat on carved wooden stools, Nkem wore her plain dark beads and a simple wrapper, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly beautiful. Not because of her smooth skin or bright eyes, but because of what she had learned. The village of Umunze saw the change in Nkem and spoke of it for generations. "Beauty is a gift," the elders would say, "but pride is a poison. What you carry inside will always find its way outside." Nkem married Chidi a year later. She wore coral beads for the wedding, but underneath, hidden against her skin, she wore the dark beads Ugo had given her. She would wear them every day for the rest of her life, a reminder of the lesson that had saved her soul. And they lived with gratitude, with humility, with love rooted not in beauty, but in character. And they taught their children that the most important thing they could wear was not fine wrappers or coral beads, but kindness. And so the village learned that when you push an elder into the mud, you push yourself into darkness. That what you give to the world returns to you threefold. That pride, no matter how beautiful its face, will always reveal its ugly heart in the end. The end.